Greetings to all the viewers out there. I'm Kavir Dulab. I'm a third year medical student and I'll be interviewing my lecturer today, Dr. Nagia.
Thank you, Kavir. So I lecture at the medical school, as Kavir said, and I teach basic medical science, specifically medical biochemistry. So I'm involved in the foundational phase of teaching the medical students, but I'm inclined towards studying toxicology as well as studying nutraceuticals, so using traditional plants and their applications for treating diseases endemic to South Africa. So those are my research interests, but my place in Kavir's education is actually in teaching biochemistry and how food contributes to health. Yeah.
Cool. So at least for once, I'll be asking you questions today. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll start it right from the go. Can you please tell me more about how awareness of Indigenous knowledge and traditional medicine and how it influences your approach to research and teaching for me?
Okay, I was privileged in that it was handed to me in a project. So in 2011, I was doing my honors, and that was when I actually started to do research and be involved in research methodology. So my first project was actually studying how Moringa aurifera was used to negate the toxicity of a toxin that's found to contaminate corn or maize meal, and it contributes to liver cancer.
Sure.
So we were looking at how moringa could possibly alleviate those factors. And then when I was presented the project, it immediately looked familiar because moringa is what we call as Indians the drumstick herb.
Yes.
Or we have drumsticks in our dal. So it was very familiar, but also interesting in that I was now applying it in a scientific context for the first time.
Yes.
And as exciting as it was to now be applying something that felt familiar, and it made me feel familiar in a sense, to something that was very new because I was just starting off. At the same time, this was 2011, and we can look at it that many years ago. Now, if you step into Dischem or Clicks, you see moringa supplements on the counter. So my question then became, as I progressed through this, was that we studied it, and this is obviously linked to Ayurvedic medicine, which is linked to Indigenous knowledge. And I saw it as like scientific validation to what we think as alternative medicine. But who commercialized it at the end? Because it's become a money-making thing, whereas our grannies were the people cooking this for us.
True.
So at what point do we become responsible for who owns this knowledge, even though we have the scientific understanding of it, to validate it in a way in the Western context? Where's our accountability towards the custodians of this knowledge?
Sure.
So that's where my awareness came through, that there is application for Indigenous knowledge, and we are able to interrogate it at that level. Where we have scientific publications, we are able to validate why it has anti-cancer effects, anti-diabetic effects. But when it comes to commercialization and making money, who takes ownership of that? So that's where my awareness came through on Indigenous knowledge and traditional medicine specifically.
To touch on that moringa, actually a personal experience, from about 2022, I noticed influencers everywhere on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. It became such a big hit, you know, and it just shows from like how things back in the day, from my granny and things like that, and now it's being utilized by the Western markets now. It's crazy to see how this has happened, you know. And luckily for me, I've been using this since I was a kid, you know. So luckily I don't need to buy anything.
So moringa was actually brought by indentured laborers from India to South Africa, and that's how it ended up here. So again, modern applications, it looks fancier in a bottle, but it has its heritage in colonial roots, actually.
And if I can ask, what are your views on the role of Indigenous knowledges and in the curriculum of your department that you work in?
Okay, so it's a two-pronged approach, I think. So Indigenous knowledge with regard to application of these traditional medicines. So I taught you not that long ago. When I would be teaching about diabetes, I would bring up, when your grandparents used this, it can stimulate a certain pathway.
Sorry, I can't remember.
It was a long time ago. And there was even a point at which I asked one of the classes to go back and read about, if you're studying insulin signaling, for example, you can actually trace back, if you look at the papers, how it actually acts similar to drugs we administer, like metformin, stimulating the same pathways. So the application of it and being used in the curriculum, I would probably be using it in the sense of for teaching how to read, to just become, for the students to become aware these things are being studied in the same context. So when you're studying pharmacology, you may pick up something that actually applies to something you are familiar with. Besides indigenous knowledge, there is also a cognizance around the influence of colonialism, as we are products of that. So you are going to be a healthcare provider. I may be a scientist, but you're going to be working with people, and you have to be aware that this has impacted people's health and the way you address your patients. Sure. Us as South Indians, or South Asians at least, we predisposed to diabetes, heart disease, and that in itself has roots from where we come from and what our generations have been through. We've been through generations of famine, which adapted us to starvation. Yes. So as much as you may think, yes, there are genetic links, we also have to consider the epigenetic links of those stresses that have been passed on to us over generations. So when you are treating these people that have come through these systems, yes, you're aware there's genetic links, but there's a historical background to it as well that has influenced generations of people, and just to bring awareness to that with our students. And the second thing is your responsibility, just to recognize the history of where we are and what medical history is, particularly in this country. I'm sure you recall when you started anatomy and the dissection hall, how interesting that was. But at the same time, a sense of responsibility with acknowledging Sarki Batman, the source of your cadavers. Again, I'm not an anatomist, but that's probably something that triggered something in your brain, just to be aware of that type of history. No, I feel as our students right now, when you say medical student, we are so swayed to the westernized way of thinking, you don't think back and you actually link to what's actually happened from decades or centuries ago, to link it back to its roots. And that's why I think it's important to be a culturally competent doctor that is culturally diverse. This country is so culturally diverse. People need to understand, the doctors need to understand why patients present the way they do, I think it matters not only in the health sciences departments, but in any department you're in. I think it's very, very important. Okay, moving on to our next question. How do you envisage incorporating Indigenous knowledge into your learning and teaching strategies? Okay, the main thing I think would be we try to constructively align knowledge. So when we teach, we try and align it to what you are familiar with. And again, this links back to my own experience of when someone brings up a term that is used at home, it makes it much easier to understand in class. So bringing in that type of knowledge, not only my own, but asking the students as well, because they may find things that are familiar. So incorporating it in that way. And for health science, I think it's particularly easy, especially if I'm teaching a field that relates to food and diet and how that contributes down the line. I think that would probably be the most, I think it's already in action, but we could probably do more, incorporating not necessarily tutorials, but kind of seminars and group sessions where we can openly discuss these applications of Indigenous knowledge in medical science specifically.
I couldn't help but notice, but you touched on diet over there. Do you think it would be important for students to also collaborate with other, not departments, but other disciplines,
Definitely, especially with medicine, you are taking aspects from different disciplines and applying them. You are constructively learning. You know that you don't just study biochemistry on its own, or anatomy on its own, or physiology, and by the same context you're applying it towards treating someone. So that type of knowledge is beneficial in sharing. Yeah.
I feel it will be a very collaborative approach, you know, that we'll need to do as healthcare practitioners one day, you know. I think back to us medical students, and I think how important it is. That's why it's very important for us students to go to these PPE events and everything, you know.
Yeah. Just to add to it, I think we're also privileged, specifically at Nelson Mandela University, with our medical school being positioned in Mission Vale.
Yes.
It's a very close link to the community, and community leaders are directly involved with the campus as well as the medical school. So that gives a type of access that I think usually medical schools do not have. So our students are privileged in that way. Yeah.
I can agree, because even there at our campus, you see the community leaders in that garden, you know, with all those herbs and things. And I think, wow, that is such an amazing thing to have. You know, we are so blessed to be on that campus as well, because having those leaders there make a difference in the end, you know, not only to the students, but to the community as well. So, yeah. Would you be able to share your views on the importance of Indigenous knowledge and how in the graduate attributes contextual to the communities that the students like myself will be working in one day?
I think we've covered it in the discussion so far as we've been moving through, just the sense of awareness and being educated on it, that it's just as important as the technical and practical knowledge that you are learning. Because again, we've seen it through history, how culture and that type of knowledge influences people's behavior, and behavior contributes to how healthcare is received. If you have to, like, we learned a lot, like when there was the Ebola outbreak, you have to consider the cultural aspect for people to trust their healthcare workers. And for you as a future doctor, trust is massive, and it's not just based on your knowledge, but also in you understanding the communities you're interacting with, and their traditions that need to be respected in their treatment as well.
Yes. Now, I feel as students, it will be very important, no matter where you are in the country, you know, if you just take the initiative as a student to even find out about these things, you know, it can take you such a far way in gaining the trust with your patient one day, you know, in any discipline, I feel. So, yes. But thank you for this conversation. I'm very honored and privileged to have had the time to share views, express our different views and everything. So just a thank you, and to all the students out there, keep on taking the initiative, learning, you know, knowledge is limitless. So thank you.